Marcellus, get us rolling. Should Joe Burrow refuse to play for the lowly Bengals?
No, he shouldn't refuse that. You're talking to a guy who had major scholarship offers and decided to go to Columbia. So remember who you're listening to right now. What are you running from? And what are you running to if you think you can figure out how the dice roll in the NFL? I'm a guy who wants to go somewhere and light the torch, not just carry the torch, be another one of. And if you look at our NFL, how it's divided by divisions, divided by conferences, it's interesting if you talk about him going to Cincinnati and he should pause. In terms of the AFC, there are only 5 AFC teams that made more appearances in the playoffs this decade than those lowly Cincinnati Bengals. Patriots, Ravens, Steelers, Texans, Chiefs. Everybody else, same amount of appearances or fewer. So I wouldn't play with that dice roll. I would sit there and say, put that on me. I want to go to a situation that's sour because, it's going to be sweet once they get a load of Joe Burrow. For me and my money, I'm betting on myself, and I'm going to any situation and magnifying and making it better.
Yeah, my football self says absolutely not. You turn that thing around, you go in there and you change the culture and you do all that. That's my football sense. My business sense says 100% with you. Because I'll go back to Hard Knocks, and I'll never forget this. And as soon as I watched it, I said, that's why the Bengals won't win. So they had an injury, and instead of going out, an injury to, I think it was to a tight end. So they were down a tight end or two. And instead of going out and getting themselves a tight end, and this is training camp, so you've got an opportunity to go out there and figure out how you're going to trade for somebody or how you're going to get somebody off the wire. Mike Brown sat in a meeting and go, well, let's just move that defensive end to tight end. Anybody got an issue with that? And everybody went, and nobody said anything. I was like, you will never win anything. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. At that point, I went, click. I go, well, Cincinnati's out. Click. So, my football self says there's no way. You grew up in Ohio. You cannot do this. Burrow, you can't. But my business sense says you ain't ever going to win anything in Cincinnati. So, yeah, sit out. Force a trade.
No, he's an Ohio kid. He can't. He has to. He has to do what LeBron did for his area. He has to uplift the Cincinnati Bengals. Hometown hero, only 3 years away. We saw what happened when he asked and implored people to help the food bank in his hometown. He has to go to the Bengals. Now, when he goes, he has to go with some stipulations. He has to go knowing I need a supporting cast around me to help me elevate my game like it was elevated at LSU. Well, when I look at the Bengals roster, they have some guys that they can use. Tyler Boyd is a solid receiver. If they re-sign A.J. Green and he's healthy, he is a #1 receiver. Joe Mixon in the mix, one of the top running backs in the league. Sure, you need to shore up the offensive line, but if Zach Taylor can steal the scheme that he saw at LSU this season, there's no reason why Joe Burrow can't be Cincinnati's version of LeBron.
And look, LeBron plays basketball. There's 5 guys on the court.
He's an all-state basketball player.
One guy in basketball can make an amazing difference. It takes a village in football, and the village just doesn't stop on the field. The coaching staff, the scouting department, the smart moves from the GM chair, all of that in order to ensure success in Cincinnati. The other reason why I say this, I went through this experience with Jeff George, Indianapolis product. He forced a trade to get to Indianapolis coming out of the draft. One of the biggest mistakes of his life. The Irsay family, particularly at that time, didn't know what the hell it was doing with the Colts. Wanting to come home and be a hometown hero for a long-suffering franchise is one of the biggest burdens you can take on. If you're a basketball player playing in the NBA, have at it. You and a couple of guys can fix it. Doesn't matter what the coaching is. Doesn't matter what the ownership and all that other stuff is. In the NFL, if the village isn't with you, you're not going anywhere.
Well, I wouldn't paint it that way. I think it's misconstruing the situation. He is not wanting to go back necessarily to his hometown. He's going to get drafted to his hometown, so let's find the silver lining in that situation. And it's funny, Mark, you talk about watching one decision and telling you someone's off.
Right.
We watched the Patriots this year, watch their tight end retire, trade away another tight end, and then at the end of the season complain they don't have a tight end.
Right.
So, and that's the Patriots. So every team finds itself in the same boat. They're one of 12 teams that haven't won a Super Bowl. But you know, there are some damn good teams that haven't won a Super Bowl. And one of them you even mentioned, the Panthers, haven't won a Super Bowl. You said force a trade to go to the Panthers. Why? What's better there? Texans,
Ownership.
Titans, Vikings, Bills. We can say ownership, but I want that to translate into production and overall holding up the trophy. And if you haven't done it yet, I'm not so guaranteed that you're going to do it going forward. So for me, I roll the dice into a sour situation to make it sweet.
Marcellus.
I'm listening. They just hired a coach for $70 million who never coached in the NFL.
Mike Brown is clearly the most frugal NFL owner we have. The history is clear as day.
Players still got helmets and shoulder pads. That's all you need. I mean, what else? You need? The weight room?
But honestly, he played at Ohio State, where they spared no expense in pursuit of victory. He played at LSU. They spared no expense in pursuit of victory. That's not the environment he's going to walk into in Cincinnati. And if he has the opportunity to force himself someplace else, bite that bullet. We beat up Eli Manning for doing it, and the Manning family, 2 Super Bowls. We beat up John Elway for doing it, and Jack Elway, 5 Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl titles, one of the greatest careers we've ever seen. Organization and situation matter tremendously in the NFL and at that position. I'm just talking. Again, what Marvin Lewis did there was a modern miracle given the level of support, and he gets beat up for it and blah, blah. But the not winning in the playoffs started in 1991. That was in January 91. Mike Brown became the owner and controlling general manager of that team later in 1991. They haven't won a playoff game since. I wouldn't do it if I'm
But
Joe
do you
Burrow.
know the teams that, I'm talking about of late, what have you done for me lately? The teams that are less than the Bengals in terms of playoff appearances of late. Like, good teams, 49ers. Just a couple days ago, let alone years ago, we were like, the 49ers are trash. The Titans right now. We could talk about the Rams, like the Cowboys, Vikings. Like, these are teams recently that have had less success than what we're talking about in Cincinnati. What's so discouraging?
What's discouraging, and I'm with you. I mean, I look at this like, hey, as a kid that's from Ohio, that would be a really tough, and you'd take a beating, and it'd be a tough thing to be able to do that. But as Jason pointed out, man, you can go, you can shut up the critics, and you can go to a place, an organization that at least gives you the opportunity. I had this conversation with Mike Shanahan, and he had told me at one point there are 12 teams in the National Football League that are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, that have the ownership to contend for the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not saying that if an outlier happens, that a team can win a Super Bowl, right? But there are 12 teams that are legitimately not just worried about growing their wealth on a year-to-year basis from an equity standpoint, but are actually spending money to win world championships. And the Bengals ain't one of them.
But the Cowboys are.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys haven't won.
Look,
I get that they haven't won.
It all has to do with how do you want to go down. Swinging with, again, because the Cowboys do a lot of dumb things I disagree with, but they're trying. And Mike Brown makes his living off the Bengals.
Right. The difference is this. The Cowboys haven't won because the Cowboys can't get out of their own way. It's not because of the resources that they spend. The Bengals don't win because they can't get out of their own way and they won't spend the resources.
Or they didn't have a franchise quarterback like this.
Well, here's the thing, and
Right?
I'm really surprised that you would take that take because I've sat up here and I've heard you talk about core values as it relates to football. And so core values, one of those core values are resiliency, grit, perseverance. We're encouraging Joe Burrow to run from an adverse situation. What would we be teaching him? What would we be saying if we're saying, hey, run for a better situation? He is from that area, in essence, 3 hours away. He has to go and be the savior. Joe Burrow cannot run from the Cincinnati Bengals in this situation.
You do know, football core values are universal from high school to college to pros. And so Bucky, you coach high school football. You see kids jump to better situations all the time.
And I'm not a fan of that. And I'm not a fan.
Okay, you were a recruited athlete. And it's like, oh, should I go to Ohio State where we got a chance to win a national championship, or should I accept this offer from Maryland?
But what's analogous in that is not that, it's the fact that he commits somewhere or he goes with the process as it's flowing and then he interrupts that. The negative part about it is how you're going to be underwater in equity wherever you go day one. Think about it. If you don't do what Elway did, if you don't do what Eli did, which is multiple Super Bowl wins, then everyone's going to look at you and deem it a failure because you forced this and didn't win. Why would you set yourself up for such preposterous expectations when you're talking about just going into an NFL as a rookie?
The other situation you're setting yourself up for, why go into a situation where I'm not going to be supported like all the other elite quarterbacks in the NFL?
Carson Palmer didn't feel that way.
I understand that.
Andy Dalton didn't feel that way either.
Right.
Carson Palmer forced his way out of Cincinnati. He had enough and forced his way out of Cincinnati. Andy Dalton doesn't have this kid's talent.
I bet you Andy Dalton felt that way this year when he's getting sacked 9 times a game, and then they benched him for a rookie.
Writing's on the wall.
He already has a natural ready-made excuse. If he goes there and he fails, we're all going to blame the organization before we blame him.
Who wants a ready-made excuse?
He has a ready-made excuse. However,
Super Bowl.
that spotlight will be on him in a different vein if he forces him
I would
out.
go. I'd be happy to go, and I'd be like leading the charge to change the culture of the organization. I'm just saying from a business aspect, I don't know that any one person can change the culture of that organization.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. And be sure to check out more of the best clips from Speak For Yourself, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.